Okay, so welcome everybody to this Lee Shed Talks. We were going to do these sorts of calls, discussions through the course of the 8th season with some of the drivers. And today I'm really pleased to say that we've got Alex Thurston with us, clearly one of the premier nitro on-road drivers in our country and indeed through Europe and the rest of the world. So welcome to my shed, Alex.
Morning.
Your abode. Why don't you tell us what you said you're in your garage? So your garage is split up into two halves. You've got one half for your toy car stuff, and the others, I guess, the dumping ground that everybody else's is.
Yeah, so like one half we've basically got all my racing stuff. Obviously, everyone's got a little junk corner, like where you just put all your screws and bits, tools, all the sort of stuff that you'd always use. We have like a little engine preparing area where my dad checks all the engines and stuff, and that's just solely for that engines. Car area here, and then bags all stored under here. And then that side of the garage, we just hang the cars up on the doors. We've got fridge and just basically stuff Mum doesn't want in the house or in the loft. That goes on that side.
I think we all suffer from that. My wife won't let me have any nitro stuff in the house at all. She puts up a little bit with the electric, but
yeah,
not the nitro stuff.
Exactly. My electric touring car stuff normally stays in my bedroom though, because it's normally too cold in the winter to come and sit in the garage. Although my dad's now kitted it out and put insulation in the door and stuff, so it's actually pretty toasty.
Cool. So I mean, this is just like a general chat as we would have in the pits or over dinner or over a beer or whatever. So why don't you just give us a bit of a background as to how you got into RC racing and where it started, and your mum and your dad, because they're heavily involved in RC, which I'm not sure that everybody knows.
Yeah. So basically, I was about 4 or 5, and my dad used to race. So like my dad used to race, well, I say race, used to fly model aircraft. Obviously, due to the weather in our country, it was very limiting. So basically, it needed to be a sunny day and a calm day to be able to fly. Obviously, our country, like weather-wise, we don't really often get them sort of conditions. So at least with car racing, like you can run it a little. So it's not ideal, but obviously you can run in the wet. You can run when it's windy. You can run when it's cold. All that sort of stuff. So there was more opportunities to race. So my dad got involved. Went to Elite RC at Mansfield. Got himself a car. Obviously, this was similar sort of time to the Bransons when they started racing. Obviously, Kyle and Andy.
So that Elite, that was originally Walt Bailey, wasn't it?
Yeah, originally that was when my dad first started. So that he wasn't really. Walt was just coming out of the scene when my dad started. He was there for a little bit, but then it was when like Richard Hicklin and Matt Baker worked in the shop, and obviously I think John Russell owned it. But obviously as a kid, I used to just go with him, and then we started doing like club championships. I didn't race at that time. I just used to just come and just stand by the fence like a little kid, just like fanboying over my dad. And in my one-piece ski suit over the winter series, and we used to go up to Draclo, Tibshelf, Ashby, shoveled snow off Ashby Circuit, like club day once, like because Ashby used to be like really close to where I used to go to school, and sometimes I'd just like go on a scooter or my bike to the track, and my dad would be there, like, and just like we'd go and practice. This was like further along in my career, sort of thing, like racing, and we'd been to Ashby before, and remember years and years ago, we went to a club day. And it was snow and ice everywhere. And like my dad went back home, and we like got these shovels, and we was shoveling the track of snow. And like Kyle Branson's dad, Andy, was like staple gunning in his tyres, put the staple in. As soon as Kyle hit the throttle, wheels went, and all just fell out. All these little things, like quite cool memories from when we were younger. And so unfortunately, we haven't got Ashby anymore. But yeah, so that's sort of how it started. And then as time went on, my dad used to say, right, Alex is into it. I tried all sorts of clubs, tried rugby, not really built for rugby, so it never really worked out. Cricket, tried football, tried all these different sports, and just ultimately always just preferred going racing with my dad. So then I got my first car, which was a Serpent Impulse, which was like, I think it was the car just before the 705 or something like that. Went to Tib Shelf, just did loads of running. Obviously, with my dad mechanicking for me as well as racing himself. At the time, my dad was like in the 200 mil class, like would make A finals at club level, not so much national level, but at club level. And then I got faster and faster and faster. And then I made an A final once, and I like qualified right at the back. And my dad was coming around to lap me, and I thought, right, I'll wait to the next corner. I'll move out of the way. And he literally just like punted me off the track and just wedged me under the fence, and everyone like booing him and like, saying, "Oh, you're a bad dad," and then he was like laughing his head off driving around. I think he came second or something like that, and third in the club championship. But he basically used to say, when Alex can regularly beat me like every time, then I'll stop. And then he did like one more season, and then just I was like, yeah, just gonna knock it on the head. That's when like I started being like the main priority, and that's what I was probably about 7 or 8. So it all went on quite fast. It all just like really, we just did loads of practice when I was younger. Not so much worrying about like trying to set a car up, just literally like just dad set it basic, and we just like went with it, and that was how it was. Like we didn't really change car to suit conditions. We generally just used to leave the car, or my car anyway, and just like leave it so that I would adjust my driving, and I could drive in different circumstances, with it being slightly slippier or like low grip, high grip. You know what I mean? We used to just leave so that I would be able to deal with more scenarios. So that's sort of how I got into it, and obviously from there on, it's just like European Championships and done British races and all that sort of stuff. Really, it just spiraled quite quick.
Yeah, so you were pretty early on then. If you were sort of entering club competitions at 7 and 8, you clearly got in pretty early on.
Yeah.
So I've got a grandson, and we're just trying to decide how soon I can get him onto a transmitter. He's only 20 months at the moment, but he's already showing a bit of interest.
Actually, I can't. It's not a lie as such, but I started my nitro when I was probably 7 or something. But this was when I was going to club winter championships with my dad. But I actually had my first Mardave. It was a Mardave V12 with like the cheesehead screws on the bottom of the other, just like the flipping aluminium chassis light. No countersink or anything like that, with me little blue and yellow Ford Escort body shell that you painted on the outside. So I had one of them, and Matt Chambers, who still races fronted class at our local club Hinkley, and his mum and dad, they started out a little club in Shilton, which is where my granddad lived, and we used to just go there, and that's where some of the champions now, like some bigger names in the electric touring car scene, like obviously Zach Finlay, who's like multiple stop British champion. Kyle used to go there some weeks, and we all started there. That's how I met Zach from all them years ago when we both went with our dads. Obviously, that's how he's turned out to be a top touring car driver and stuff. And we used to work together. He was better than me at that age because he was a lot older than me. But that's all all thanks to like Matt and his mum and dad for starting that little club out. And just we used to have to, where the hall was, we used to have to lay the track out, and then to put the carpets away, we used to have to walk down like a big steep hill with like carpets on everyone's shoulders and stuff. It was like walking down a load of steps. It was like crystal maze trying to get everything back in the container. But people did it for weeks and weeks, and just all kind of lucky to have some of the venues we have now, when you think really what we had back then was like a couple of step ladders and to stand on, and luckily we had quite a good stage there. So, but yeah,
I think it's a key, especially what we are in the moment with the lockdown and everything else. I think we miss our clubs, and the clubs, I think we take them a little bit for granted now and again. They do put an awful lot into it. So from there, when did you kind of get your first sort of national win in nitro, and did that then lead straight on to getting some support from a shop or a manufacturer, or what happened? How did that process happen?
So basically, John Russell Elite, obviously, I ran for Serpent for my dad was there a long time, and then obviously I just took over from there. And it was probably till the year 2000. So in 2007, I was running Serpent, and I did my first European B Championship there, which was quite soon after starting Nitro, actually. It was only probably 1 or 2 seasons. I just thought, well, we'll go for a laugh, and that's what it'll be. And I bumped up 3 times, I think it was. And then we went to the next European Championships, and we not got close with, but we'd sort of been slightly recognised by Michael Salvin was there representing Serpent. Adrian Bertin was there. I think it would have been Orion, obviously. And I don't know if it was Kyosho as well at that time. I'm not sure. But basically, they were like impressed with how I bumped up and stuff like that as a young kid, because I literally just come down the stairs, sit down, like wait 20 minutes, go back up, come down, like literally did that 3 times. And I had like loads of people. I had a lady called, I think it was Monica. She was factory Nova Rossi. She used to be Dario Ballestri's pit lady. And they were like doing my engines and all this. Max Fantini was in the pit, like checking all my engines and stuff. It was proper crazy. As a little kid, they weren't like in depth like they were the top lads. Like they were just there, like being a bit of a moral support. Like Adrian was there, like talking to me, like keep calm, like, and Michael was there, just like recommending things. And Monica was there. She after one final, she took the engine out, checked everything, make sure the bearing was all right, all that sort of stuff. Didn't need to, but that was quite crazy. And then I went to the next Euros, which was 2008 in France. We had multiple radio issues the whole time. It's like radio interference, like wrote 2 chassis off because the car just kept going straight. It was really up quite high, and there was like loads of telemasts everywhere, and people just like used to get interference crazy and like crashing into things and going under barriers. And I was in the pit tent. I've been everywhere with my car, just like kept doing its own stuff. But then I got recognised by Kyosho after that. Basically, I joined Kyosho for the 2009 season, I think, something like that. Might have been a little bit early, 2008, 2009, with Neil School and the Craddocks. Obviously, Mick Craddock, he was like heavily involved with Kyosho. Carl Marsden. So at the time, I was dealing through PBM Racing, which was I don't actually know. I think it was Andy Wallace at the time who was in the shop. I don't know who owned it or anything like that. So they like helped me with support, and that got me some Nova Rossi engines through, because I think Kyosho UK were the distributor of Nova Rossi and Racing Experience Fuel and Kronos tyres. So that came like a bit of a package. So I decided to leave Serpent, obviously, then. And then I ran Kyosho Triple R. Brilliant car. Obviously, won many World Championships. David won his European Championship with that car at Halifax that time, 2005. Really strong car. I think I got a first third in championship in about 2010, something like that. But I could never win a race. Never. Literally just picked up a couple of third places, a couple of fourths and that. Bit of bad luck from other people, probably. And then 2012, the R4 came out, which was a good car, but they like came out with, I think it was plastic diff gears, and it just like they used to just strip all the time. So I just basically learned to drive in 2-wheel drive for half that season. But we managed to, when the new gears came out, some like steel gears. I can't really remember the ins and outs, but we got some new gears. And at Stonehaven, probably in 2011, 12, something like that. It was like half wet, half dry. Obviously, probably from all them years back testing with basic setup, just driving around, learning how to drive in different conditions. We managed to we got our first national win at Stonehaven. So I think it was Mark Green was second, Joe Kerry was third. And after that, it's just like you get on like a bit of a confidence thing, and then you think, well, I can do it now. So I'll just keep trying and persevere with this. And basically just one thing led to another, got a couple more like podiums and stuff. Felt more confident, got my first TQ at Mendip. But then ultimately, Mark Green's experience just hunted me down.
Still doing that, mate.
Second, yeah, he's still competitive. So I think it was 2013 season again. I was still a Kyosho. End of the season, we decided, this was after a couple of years, decided to go back to Serpent because with the problems with the diffs with the Kyosho, it just like really just took a they gave my racing a big hit because most of the races we were just breaking down in the finals because like the diffs would break and it just became not fun. They thought, oh, we'll go back, and John Russell again offered us to run for Serpent again on the 747, I think it was. Went to the World Championships in Thailand and had quite a good success. I was running Sirio engines at that time. Really good. They'd had a lot of problems in the run-up, Sirio engines, with like power and stuff and different issues. But they made some like different engines, slightly tighter, not as much compression, and they work really well in the hot conditions anyway. So it's been like a long story. We could be here for like hours and hours and hours like, talking about it. I could tell you a lot of details really, but
so we went through. So you went through with Serpent, and I think you said John and Serpent helped you directly, and that kind of stuff, which I think is kind of a good story. If you start young enough and you do get some results, and you're a likable lad, as it were, you kind of get the benefits from that later on. So Serpent was with you when I first came back into 8th grade, when you were running Serpent there. So. Tell us a little bit about the Serpent Electric, because we mentioned that we had a quick call last night, and we sort of mentioned that was just to be a bit of fun, but you end up winning that championship. I think it was the second year that you ran the Serpent Electric, and a lot of guys don't realise they're pretty damn quick, nearly as quick as, or in some cases as quick as, the IC cars.
Yeah, so with regards to electric, I was heavily involved with obviously my 200mm at national level, but at the time my dad was a shift worker, so he worked like 24/7 shifts. So like he'd have a couple of 2 mornings, one afternoon, 2 nights, and it basically, the way it worked with holidays, with these amount of holidays, we'd use like quite a lot of holidays being a shift worker during the week when we go to international stuff. So my dad couldn't commit to doing all 200mm nationals, which was 9 of, and I think there's 9 of the 8 scale nationals. So it was like, it'd probably have to take a lot of holidays for nationals, which wouldn't leave as much time for European races. So we had to decide, do we do 200mm, do we do 8 scale? And I, at the time, preferred my 200mm. So we did all the 200mm nationals, obviously all the international stuff. And I thought, right, well, what can I do? Because I worked my apprenticeship at the time, I did just Monday to Friday, and then had the weekends off. I thought, what can I do? So I went to, Richard Hicklin was at Halifax National with Matt Baker, because his dad Pete was off on holiday with his wife. So I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll go and help out. Like, I might as well. Like, they're going up. So my dad was on like a night shift or something, so he dropped me off at Matt's house, and I went with Matt to Richard's, and then we all went up as like a bit of a lads' weekend, and like, again, loads of funny stories from that, really. But went and thought, Matt was running his electric, and Richard was like running the nitro and did really well and came third, I think, that weekend. And Matt TQ'd and had some problems in the final with dumping and stuff. But I was like, you know what? I could actually do that. I can drive. I can like drive my real car to all the race meetings. I can roughly do my car, and it's a good opportunity for me to be able to learn my car setup myself rather than get my dad to do everything. So I thought, well, I'll learn that. And at the same time, why not? Because it's like showcasing some of my sponsors like Aramax with the lipos and Hobby Wing speedos and motors and Serpent 8 car. I thought, well, I can do something at the same time as enjoy myself. So I used it very much as a social side of things, like go and help out all the nitro racers, obviously, which I knew anyway. Go and help people out if they were struggling for a pitman. I could obviously learn my setup myself, how to set the cars up and so on and so forth, and like promote my sponsors. So I decided to do that. Did that for 2 seasons. The first season, I turned up at round 5 with a brand new car. I'd never driven it, and I was petrified because, like, running 4-cell, never done it before, and I was thinking, don't plug it in backwards, and like, is it all going to overheat and blow up and explode? And like, having very extremely limited knowledge on batteries and motors and speedos, and basically just like put the box standard setup on it. Went out, thought that was pretty good. Like, literally did like 2-minute stints just to make sure I wasn't like hammering my batteries and stuff, and basically like got used to running it and could fine tune my speedo settings. It didn't really need to go much faster because it was pretty fast out of box setup anyway. And then like there was a lot of people started coming into it then because they seen potential of what an electric 8 car could do, and it was quite easy relative to most classes, to probably a nitro. Like initially getting set up, it was just like plug it and play. It wasn't as fast top speed, but bottom end torque wise, it was really quick, obviously because you had instant power. Top end wasn't quite the same. But I did that. So I did round 5. I think it was round 4 it was at Cotswolds. And I basically, TQ won the first one and then just managed it. It was 5 to count out of 9. And I did 4, 5 all the way to 9. And TQ'd and won everyone. And just like won the championship. And I was like, what the hell? That was like, I thought, am I going to be hated for this or what? And it was like kind of good. And then the next season, we had 24 drivers because everyone was like, oh, that's a really good class. Obviously, it's outdoors, electric, quite easy. Don't need a pit man, all that sort of stuff. So then obviously people started joining and then it actually grew quite a lot and took off. And then next season, my dad was like in the process of might be retiring. There was like some voluntary redundancies at work and stuff like that. So then I did one more season of electric. I won the championship again. Like I thought, I'll try and keep a clean slate because Adam Catchpole had come and like done some electric, and I managed to TQ and win some of them races as well. And basically got to the last national at Wanwell. It was wet, and I was like, I want to keep a clean sheet, but at the same time, is it worth damaging my electrics for? I was like, oh. Managed to find a wet weather setup, so I put all that in, and then I don't know who it was. I'm not sure exactly who it was, but somebody thought it'd be really funny, like because I only managed to get out for one qualifier, and it was like pretty wet, and my car stopped on like the penultimate lap or something, and I qualified I think about 6th, and I was really gutted because I thought I want to keep a clean sheet while I do electric, but it didn't work out. But then. Basically, somebody as a laugh, because I'd already won the championship, obviously, anyway. Somebody for a laugh thought it'd be funny. But basically, it used to be one of them, the wet weather setup was one of them motors and speedos, which you could, like, plug them together, all the connectors. And somebody thought it'd be funny to, like, reverse one of the connectors. So they were like, oh, put your car on the line, mate. And I was like, no, it's all right. I do laugh. And they're like, no, you don't want to do that. You're running through all the water in that. And I was like, yeah, right, okay, whatever. So it was like the Babs in race control, like, counted down, and I was like, right, ready to go. Got to pick my way through, take it nice and easy. I like hit the throttle, and it went backwards. My 8 car, obviously with a solid axle in one way, just went backwards doing that. And I was like, oh, what the hell? But my steering wheel was still the same. So then I had to drive a full race, like trying to teach myself to like push the trigger forward to go. And every time I pulled the trigger backwards, it just like locked up and went into like a reverse mode. So I had to like drive opposite with my throttle, and times I came onto the main straight and like punched it and it just started going backwards because it was like instant reverse. It had no brakes. It was just like, what on earth? So obviously that was the end of electric. It was quite fun. I think I finished 2nd in the race or something like that because people slid off and I just like drove around slowly. And then the season after that, we got taken on as factory serpent drivers. Well, to be honest, for 200 mil, it was that second season of electric, which was about 2015, I think, and then 2016 we started fresh with 200 mil and 8th nitro with the 988, I think it was.
Right.
So then we started our 8th scale nitro campaign, which was like a pretty big learning curve to start with, in all honesty. Like driving 200 mil. I mean, I'm not smooth by any means in any sort of which way, but with 200 mil, I was kind of about right. The 8th scale, I found myself just driving really soft. And it just took a lot of we didn't get a chance to practice too much. So with the 8th scale, because we were thinking about 200 mil international races. So we didn't really practice too much with the 8th scale. But then eventually we've now sort of turned our focus more to 8th scale, being as the market for 8th scale is like bigger than the 200 mil.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been pretty good. It's been a long road.
And then, so was it this year or last year you got picked up by Capricorn and Isla Motors and that kind of thing?
So with regards to a lazy tune engines, so I would think it would have been 2000. Basically, my friend Dan Jones, he became a distributor for like the Middle East because he lives out in Oman, and he became a distributor out there. And he was like, "Oh, come on, man, get in. Like, you need to come and run a lazy. He's really good, really good." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." Like, just giving it because I think I was factory XRD at the time, and we had really good we had good support. We got like given quite a few engines and stuff, but they were perfect in the UK. But we had quite a few troubles with the 8th engines, and then it became apparent that the rest of the 8 scale team were like, for XRD, weren't really using their own engines. Like the guy that was running the company didn't use his own engines. He went off and got a new sponsor, and then, despite making the engines, didn't run them. So I was like, well, this doesn't really make sense. So I'm just keep going here, and I made a European final at Mulhouse in 2017, the A Championships, and basically was one of the only people there, one of two. Me and Mark Green were the only ones there running them, and it was like, I've just been massively outpowered. And when I watch the videos back now, I think, what on earth? I should have just changed before. So then I was like, Dan let me try one of his 200 mil engines, and I was like, whoa, that's really quick. That was like, had a lot of bottom end power. So then I spoke to LST, and obviously I'd worked with him quite some years ago, like 2014 or something, 13, and but they were different, based on a different engine then. So now he went to Nova Rossi. I thought, I'll try the engine. I tried them, and I was really surprised. So I joined the Lazy Tuned, and the rest has been history, really. I've run them ever since. So
yeah, they seem pretty good.
He's just brilliant trackside support. European Championships and World Championships. He's always in the pits. Like, he's always there. Goes to all the different races. And that's what you want. You want good engine. It's not all about the engine. It's about the fact that you need your support there. It's nice to have somebody that, if we're just a bit stuck on the tune and you think, don't know which way to go, just before the qualifying heat at a big race, and you think, what should I do? Is there a right or wrong? And they just know, because they've like had so much experience. They know their engine inside out, and they just do it. And then sometimes it can just save you a run, you know, from having that engine that's a bit lean, a bit rich, and make a big difference at international. So ultimately, it was Dan Jones that got me into it. And ever since then, I've just like ran them religiously, and LA's getting a bigger following in the UK now, so it's a good thing. With regards to Capricorn, so I was running Factory Serpent for a while, and then came across a few issues over different race meetings, more so with the 8 scale car. Like, it didn't suit my driving. I don't know why that is. I'm not sure. Still, obviously, it's still a good car. Like, their new car as well seems to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Obviously, because the past results that people are showing at the minute, but it just didn't suit me. I just felt like I had to drive 110% all the time. And when you do that and you're out your comfort zone, you just inevitably make mistakes. And I found myself making mistakes. The 200 mil wasn't so bad, but I had a few personal qualms with it with regards to like gearbox and stuff. I had a few gears stripped and a few little silly things. And I thought to myself, is it me? But then we tried a few different options, and it just didn't work out. So I thought, you know what, is it time for a change? And obviously, one of my good friends, Kyle, running Capricorn, and I thought, well, it's a proven car, like it's pretty good, like obviously. So I thought, well, I'll try Kyle's car. So after the Euros, Patrizia had previously made me an offer after the 8 scale Euros, just a few weeks before, and I thought, right, I'll try. And so I'll run my Serpent the last time at the Euros, because I've made my mind up that I just wanted a change and I needed to try something different. So I basically made my mind up. But I said, you know what, just out of loyalty to Serpent, I'm not just going to because they were very good to me. They were brilliant, like so much support, and obviously factory driver at such a young age. They were really good. I thought, right, I'm not going to totally ditch them. I previously made an A-main appearance at the track where we were running the Euros for an F1 and my car was really good. And I thought, right, so we'll make the Euros. I'll try and go out on a bit of a bang, just try and make the final, do something another good appearance for Serpent. But obviously, I already knew I was leaving, so I told them that was going to be my last race. I sent Joaquin an email and basically said, "Look, thank you very much for your support. Been really really grateful, but I just personally need a change, just to prove to myself that I'm not doing something wrong, or So I decided to move, obviously Capricorn, joined Capricorn, and I tried Kyle's 200mm car after the Euros, and it did suit me. I mean, his setup personally at the time, I didn't feel like it was how I would want to drive, but I don't know how he thought that for himself. I don't know if he was struggling that week or what, because I think he made quite a few changes over the week. So I don't know if he just wasn't comfortable or what, but obviously we both had a bit of bad luck. He had some bad luck in the final with a little accident in the pits in the warm-up just before the start, which weren't really his fault. And then I started 7th, and I felt really confident about bumping up. My pace was there, and I thought, that's really good. I've got a good race pace. And then I got a stop-and-go penalty at the start for a jump start, which I didn't really jump start, and just multiple problems. And then I ended up stripping a gear, and then that in my head was like, I'm doing the right thing, because I felt like even with the stop and go at the start, because the pit lane was so short, it wouldn't have really lost too much time. And I was so confident that I could make the final. Obviously, with other people, obviously, as normal, you get people run out of fuel and like accidents, people crash and stuff. And looking at the order, I was ever so sure that I would have like been pretty close, because Kyle came 4th in the final and he lost like a lap and a half at the start because he was late for the start because obviously the accident in the pits. And I was like, I'm sure I could have maybe got closer, or maybe in a fastest loser to get in the final or something. Obviously then the gearbox went, and the previous year to that in the Euros as well, I had issues where I clawed my way through the field and started getting into contention, and then again I had a failure of the gearbox. So I was like, I'm making the right decision. So I decided to do that. So I thought, right, after that was my last race, I felt like I'd done justice. I'd done as much as I could. Obviously, a few things stopped us from going any further, but I got my Capricorn cars. I started building up with my dad. Very impressed with the build quality and everything. Decided that the last national I could compete in an 8 scale was round 8 at Wanwell. Saturday was brilliant. Like, car was flying. Obviously, with my LA's engine was bang on. So I thought, right, this is quite promising. And my lap times were faster than previous seasons, so obviously that's a good thing. Then we had a bit of a wet weather Sunday, which was a bit hit and miss. I think TQ qualifying by, it was like either between 6 and 9 seconds. It was quite a substantial margin, and I was like really impressed. Then the final came. Obviously started TQ. Had a little moment of mistaking myself, went into the grass and managed to catch back up. Yeah. Then it dried out, and I thought, right, well, this is the time to see where we're at. And some of the other lads, they made mistakes, had accidents, and I thought, well, is that because now I'm like more of a contender? Like, I don't have to push 110%, and I can drive within myself. Are these people now pushing more to try and keep up? I don't know. But in the end, obviously, the main contender had like Tim, who's normally like, we're pretty close on track, and he's been pretty dominant over the last few seasons. Like, had an accident, his car broke. And I don't know if Neil had what fault he had in the end, but I don't know if he dropped back or where he finished. But I just managed to like bring it home, and I think Andy Hastings was a couple of laps behind. So I was like, there's a positive. The last national, I think it might have been at Brooklands, possibly. I'm not 100% sure. We was at the World Championships. But then the 200mm was the following weekend, and I had the CO3 Capricorn 200mm car in its first outing, and I was like 0.3 a lap faster at Cotswolds, which is my home track. And that was in the first weekend, and I was like, whoa, this is brilliant. And obviously Kyle was there, so it's brilliant to have somebody that I could like really work with. And obviously I could transfer some knowledge from the Serpent, which was at the time regarded as probably one of the best 200mm cars,
yeah,
performance-wise. So I was like, Capricorns were always generally thicker diffs, but they always used to say that they'd have problems in lower grip. So I sort of took my sort of Serpent setup, what I do in the UK, and obviously the Capricorn thing, and worked sort of. We had a half day practice on Friday, and then we were right up to speed by Saturday, like running good times. And I think Kyle was quite close. Well, both of us on the first or second round of qualifying on the Sunday both broke the 200mm track record for like 5-minute time. And then Kyle in the third round, when I think I was sort of similar pace to round 2, and he went like 5 or 6 tenths faster. So obviously, officially, we both broke the track record, but obviously his stance because he was first. And then the final, we both sort of pulled away, and Joe Kerry, who's also Capricorn, came as well. And then obviously we all sort of just slowly like spread out a little bit. And at the end, I couldn't tell my exact pace of how far behind I was because I had a crash with a back marker and I didn't on my roof, and then I got lapped. But until that point, I was pretty confident in the half-hour final, which that I wasn't going to be a lap, like it was going to be 3/4 of a lap or something, which I was dead impressed with, for the fact that Kyle had obviously just been vice world champion and he was racing like at the top end of the mains, and to be like 3/4 of a lap behind, which ultimately at Cotswolds is probably like 10 seconds over. It's like I was quite impressed with that for myself. I thought it's not too bad. So obviously from there on, that was like last season, and I've just like been preparing like crazy in the garage with my dad, and I now try and build all of my cars myself and try and do as much as possible. So in future, there's less pressure off both of us, really.
So I mean, brilliant. I mean, like we say, it's all about the stories and who's helped you and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's great for everybody to hear how that progression is made. So with the current car, or with the cars in general.
Yeah.
So something that I think is always quite interesting, especially for guys at my level, comfortably bottom half, is do you end up, do you have just like a stock setup, whether it's 200mm or 8, doesn't either, that you're always going to take to the track? So you're always going to say, right, that's my start setup, and I'm going to go with that, and I'm going to work on the setup through the course of the day? Or are you always looking back to what the setup was the previous year, even if it was with a different car, and then you put that setup on before you go? Or what's your kind of setup process on the chassis, not so much the engine and gearbox, but definitely the chassis setup? How do you go about getting that in place?
So 200mm, I generally have a box setup. Like with my Capricorn now, it's like 60,000 rear diff, 1 million front diff, Serpent red springs, like a 900 shock oil 3L piston, and just go everywhere with that. And then generally speaking, with 200mm, if your car's pretty good, you don't really need to play with like camber link angles and stuff. Generally speaking, like in the UK, I don't really anyway. I might do a broad when the traction's up and it's different sort of conditions. But I basically mainly only really changed like shock springs for the 200mm, and just like basic things like camber, toe in, that sort of stuff. But generally speaking, I try and like always with the 200mm start with that setup and then just work with that over a 200mm weekend, because with 200mm you notice a bigger difference when changing things like diff, oils and shock oils, because the tires are so small versus 8 scale. Everything's so more such more like sensitive, so you notice a bigger difference. And obviously with 200mm, because you've got smaller tires, you go barreling at the end of the straight at like Cotswolds or something and you slide off, it's completely different, because like changing your setup can make a massive difference at Cotswolds. You know what I mean? With the undulations and stuff, you notice more the car slides around different. Whereas an 8 scale, because you've got more downforce, it's harder to notice a setup change. So with 200mm, I generally just start with, like I say, 60,000 rear diff, 1 million front, like my Serpent red springs and my shock oil. So generally speaking, with the Capricorn, I haven't really changed the springs from Serpent red when I've tested it or anything like that.
Right.
But like varied between 800, 900 and 1,000 with shock oil. Diffs, that's probably the biggest thing that you would do, like diffs with the Capricorn 200mm car. I used to run 60,000. I preferred that. Kyle normally in the UK start with an 80,000 and maybe go backwards. So we both have different sort of theories on it. I'd sometimes go up to a 2.5 million front diff. Obviously changed sort of basic things, minor things like a little bit more camber depending on how tyres wear. So 200mm generally, I don't like go nuts. I generally just try and stick to my basic setup, because a body shell also with 200mm, in my opinion, has a greater effect than it does with 8 scale. I don't know why that is, but just for me in the UK, it seems to make more difference. With regards to 8 scale, I generally start with my basic setup, which it depends where I'm going and on the conditions. So like last season when I was at Wanwell, because Wanwell isn't really renowned for being too bumpy. Obviously, there's that slightly patchy area before onto the straight, but the rest it's not really bumpy. It's more undulation. But I started there last year with, I think it was 1 all piston front, 2 all piston rear, and then it was 450 front, 550 rear shock oil with my Mugen white springs all round. Started with that. I tried different. I tried 3 old pistons with like 800, 900, which to me didn't really work with the Mugen white springs again. But 8 scale, I find myself changing more, like more track width, mainly rear track width, making it wider, narrower, that sort of stuff. Just do slightly more things with camberling positions and like shims and stuff.
It's interesting though. You say about, because I'm a different level, but I've never messed about with track widths on the rear and 8 scale car. What are you trying to do? If you're narrowing it down, just get it to rotate a bit.
Yeah. Like, for example, somewhere like Brooklands, you want it kind of, particularly the rear, you want it slightly more wide, just so you've got more like stability when you're going through high speed corners and stuff. Obviously, if you make it really, really narrow, obviously, technically you've got like, you have more forward drive, I think, personally. But obviously the car will break away faster. But like places like Cotswolds, that's a good thing because your car will rotate quicker, you know? So it's like a catch-22 thing. It's always a balance. Like the front, for example, if you're on it, this is just my opinion, I always believe that if you make the front narrower, initially it will turn a lot faster, but like in, say, a high-speed track like Brooklands, for example, or like a European equivalent like maybe Lostella or something, which is quite fast.
Yeah.
If you're like a really narrow front end, then like coming onto the main straight where we have that big sweeper, it would just like hook in really quick, but then either understeer or it just catch you off guard, you know? Whereas when the front's a little bit more like wide, okay, you haven't got that initial response, but you've got more like a flow in, your car like holds more corner speed. So I think in 8 scale, that's like quite a good tuning aid, which people don't really mess with because they're just like afraid to or whatever. But 200 mil, you don't really play with that because the car's 200 mil and you basically just keep the rear as wide as you can to get as much like rear end grip as you can. And then the front, sometimes you maybe go like, very often I know people run 200 mil track width. It's like 199.5 or 1990, like sort of thing. It's not something that I personally play with too much on a 200 mil car. But 8 scale, I've noticed I actually only really started doing it back in the last season, start of this season. And I'll tell you why I actually didn't notice that was because I actually when we went to the 8th Worlds last year in California, the grip was like massive. And I was like, what the hell? My car's flipping over and stuff. I thought, right, I'll try some random setup. And I just thought, rather than trying all this like crazy stuff with setup, just make the car wider just to stop it from like digging in and doing stupid stuff. So then I ended up going to Cotswolds the start of this year when we all had a test when I seen you last time.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, my car's not turning. It just doesn't feel right. And then I checked the track width and I was like, oh, from the Worlds, it was like 266 or something crazy like that. And I was like, what on earth? And I just thought, right, I'm going to go completely bonkers and make it like, no, not bonkers, but make it like 263 on the back or something like that. And I was like, what on earth? It was like a completely different car, totally different. I thought, well, I've never realised that like 3 mil had that much of effect, you know? And I obviously played with the front, and then it's just about like, obviously optimising the balance. But it was just something that I forgot to. I did all my car setup before I went to Cotswolds to like test from like obviously California, which was totally different grip conditions, people rolling over everywhere and stuff, to like Cotswolds, which was totally different, tighter, less grip, colder day, that sort of stuff. And I just thought, why is my car like this? Is what I always use to set up, and it just doesn't work. And then I realised that I forgot to do the track width, and it just made like a massive difference. So, but with regards to kit setup, I don't go too mad with it, to be honest. Really, try and stick. I've decided, me and my dad, people get into a frenzy with body shells where like they go nuts and they like have this Blitz body shell, Protoform body shell, this body shell, that body shell, extreme body shells. we've just decided this season, particularly with 8 scale, that obviously the Extreme do a pre-cut version for Capricorn, and obviously all brands like Arc and Serpent Mute and all that sort of stuff, that we're just going to stick with the Diablo and the Super Diablo, and they're the only 2 ones we're going to use. They're the only 2 body shells we're going to bring with us. That's it. We're just going to go with that, and that's what we're got with. Because otherwise, you get into this frenzy of like, oh, the Protoform's this bit better, or this body's better, you know, rather than just, if you look at all the top drivers, and I've noticed it with like the likes of Dario Balestri, all your top Infinity drivers and Simon Kurzberg and that, they all just use one body shell, and they work with the car around that body shell, rather than trying to look for extra tenths, or in some case of lower drivers, seconds per lap in a body shell. And you just need to get used to it and just run with what you've got, and then work with your car.
Yeah. So I guess, I mean, because David and other guys have sort of said to me, just try and keep it simple. Try and do same tyres, same body shell. Yeah. Just try and keep everything as consistent, and then you've got something to play with. Because if you're backwards and forwards on body shells, or backwards and forwards on tyres, or whatever it may be, I find, must be, I just get lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Just get lost. So,
and at times I've probably done that myself. And you go, is that body better? Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. Is it not? Just what works for you. Or shall I use it because everyone else is using it? Well, I tried it and I think, well, they're all going fast with it, but I don't like it. So therefore, now I just say, well, I don't like it, so I don't use it. You know.
Yeah. So how about the drivetrain? Do you mess about too much with the 2-speed and I know your dad does the clutch settings for you, but in effect, is it just kind of get there, it's set as it is, and away you go, and you just do it? Or do you? So
he always generally just like sets them before we go roughly. The only thing he doesn't set is the spring tension on the clutch. He doesn't really mess with that. Like, we'd leave that. We basically, after a race, we come home, or even at the race sometimes, and he winds that right off to stop the spring being squashed.
Yeah.
Obviously, because over time, if you're like, say you don't use it for 3 weeks or whatever, it's just sitting there compressed, and eventually it's going to take that form. So he always backs the screw off. And then really, like, it's just with the drivetrain, we play it sometimes with the gearing, but generally speaking, if you like go to like a saying, like you only run in the UK, generally speaking, if you find something that works, you just write setup down on a setup sheet, and that's the gearing you start with. But sometimes, yeah, you do play. Like, obviously, the gear change can be a bit of a pain sometimes, depending on like grip level, because obviously sometimes if the grip's lower, you spin up more and the gearbox comes in earlier and stuff. But I try and drive around that. But what I've learned from my time racing, particularly with 8 scale, is I personally believe you'd always better to have an early gearbox than a late gearbox. There's nothing worse than a late gearbox, because you're just stressing the engine out. Everything's getting stressed. Again, having an early gearbox isn't good, but you can sort of drive around that really by like, again, it's not an ideal scenario, and some people might say, well, that's ludicrous, but like, especially if you're spinning the wheels up and your gearbox is coming in early, and ultimately that means you probably, for the condition, needs to be a little bit smoother with the throttle, so your gearbox comes in at the right point, you know?
Yeah.
So if your gearbox is really early sometimes, and it wasn't the day before in practice, you've probably got less grip, and you're probably just spinning your wheels up. Sometimes, again, people always, particularly in 200mm, I learned this from Colchester National years and years ago, probably. Well, I had a TQ and win, and my tyre wear was considerably less than everyone else's. And also, it was Walt Bailey and Glyn Beale that told me. So people always get this thing where, like, you need really low gearing, loads of bottom end, all that sort of stuff. If the grip's not there, all you're doing is spinning your wheels up, wearing your tyres out for no benefit. So that year, I mean, I generally was like on my Serpent at the time, would run 16:21, like 16 first opinion, 21 second. And I left the second as 21, but the first was a 17. And you'd think, that makes no sense. Why wouldn't you put a 15 on for more bottom end? And Walt and Glyn were like, just try it. And they tried it. And I was like, I can tell no difference. My lap times have got faster, and my tyre wear's gone down. And I was like, well, why does that work then? And Walt was explaining to me, well, you've got a lower gearing, so it pulls off nicer. You've got a better feeling for your throttle. It's not spinning the wheels up. You're not burning your tyres out. And it's almost teaching you to like hold more corner speed because you haven't got that initial drive like you had before. And I was like, well, I never thought of it like that. It was proper crazy. And it was just one time like thinking, that makes no sense. And just listening to an experienced racer like Glyn and obviously knowledge of Walt, it's like, whoa, I never thought of it like that. So, yeah, if you need, sometimes people get hung up on this low gearing thing, more bottom power, but it's not always the case.
Yeah. So, I mean, you mentioned a bit earlier on. So you went to the Worlds last year, which looked, is it still City Raceway? Was it still City Raceway? Still
City, yeah.
Looked absolute nuts. I mean, the grip looked absolutely insane.
Crackers.
It just seemed.
It was bananas. It was like driving a Scare Electrics car. It was honestly unbelievable. But,
worth going? Enjoyed it?
Too right. It was well different to what I've ever seen in my life. It was like absolutely bananas. Like the true world champion won there. Like from day one, like it was just. I mean, I say obviously it's not always the fastest person that wins, but in that case, there, he wasn't probably the fastest, but he was incredibly fast all week. He made the least mistakes out of anyone. His pit crew was brilliant, and he just like did what he needed to do, you know. But like for myself, it was a massive learning. Like I'd never seen anything like that. I know obviously the lad that won was Japanese, and they, from what I know of, they're pretty renowned for having quite high grip. I don't know if they still do. In the past, they have used tyre additive in their series and stuff, so they're quite used to high grip. But like seeing like cars like barrel roll, like in a hairpin, when they put the throttle on and the car was just going like that, was like, what on earth? This is absolutely mental. I remember everyone going to the fence and seeing the guy that won on the first day. This I don't want to say his name wrong, but it was like Shoki Takahata or something like that, and he was like ended up winning the Worlds on the first day. I almost stood at the fence watching him, and his car was, every time he hit the throttle out with his OS, it was just like just backflip. I'm like, what on earth? Crazy. And like some of the American guys were like really fast, obviously because they knew. But even the American guys that were like locals were like, we've never seen this before. Like it was quite. And what made it worse was the fact that it was right next to a NASCAR facility, which was like pretty cool again, and it was like quite open, and the wind would like blow through. So not only did you have the fact that like the grip was absolutely absurd, but there was like wind coming over the mountains and like coming into the track, and it was just like the weirdest thing ever. Like the rostrum had to had these like big steel cables to hold the roof down because like the wind would just whip through. It was absolutely crazy. I mean, like fair play to the family. Like there was, I can't remember a good wine family, but it was like a brilliant round world. Like it just like sometimes the conditions were against them. Like with regards to the wind, they had all the big massive marquees up, and the wind was just so strong. It was like 80 miles an hour, and the gazebos were like lifting, and sometimes, but obviously most of the time in like America, they don't have like permanent facilities as such like we do. Like their facilities permanent, but after the Worlds, they like took the gazebos and everything down. And then they had to like move the rostrum out of the way, and then they had a big NASCAR meeting, and all of a sudden everyone was driving over. And like where we were all pitting was the VIP facility for celebrities to park the cars. It was like crackers. But it was just amazing what sort of job they did. It was unbelievable. And I mean, the Goodwine family put in like a brilliant meeting, and we all had like a buffet in like the NASCAR pit area, like in all the garages. It was really, really cool. It was just so unique. I'd never seen anything like it. It was completely bonkers. But it was something that I learned. So I'm never renowned for being very good in high grit. Mainly, I always say that myself, and I believe that's because I'm quite like an aggressive driver, like going into corners like really quick, and like everyone always laughs at me in electric for like being on the ragged edge and stuff, which I don't really feel like I am, but people always say I am. And even when I watch videos, I think, oh, that's a bit nuts. But like high grip, it doesn't really favour me because like I go in the corner really fast and then my car like slides and then flips over. Yeah. So I struggled a lot initially, but then found a setup which I was comfortable with. And then it was again just like it was really strange. Like I think there was only like one corner which you like put a full steering input into, like everything. It was all like really like just being super smooth with your steering. Crazy, weirdest experience I've had in my life racing one. But at the same time, it was really cool. You know, just seeing an 8 car just go flat out everywhere, like it was nuts. But
hopefully, I'll get to experience that at some point. So we're getting close to the end of the time. So we've touched on a load of other bits and pieces. So just because you travel a bit, so do you just basically take your normal race stuff, or do you just send stuff out, like traveling on airplanes? And we're not going to do that for much longer, but packing the bag is always a bit of an issue. I went to the plus 40s because I'm of that age. Thank your mum for looking after me. For those who don't know, Julie's an EFRA rep, so she was there for that day. And packing was a what to take and what not to take, and it was really good to go with a bunch of guys because we kind of shared the stuff around, because that was pretty important. So, how about you? Do you just take basically pick up your UK stuff and throw it on the plane, or do you do anything different?
So it's a bit different now because now my parents are retired. They tend to like drive to the races, so we basically just take what we take to the nationals now, because I normally fly on my own, or with, say, like last time in the 10th Euros, Matt Baker came in, we went together. Generally, I just go on my own because obviously I can't afford to lose so many days holiday through work. My mum and dad, they drive with all the stuff now. But previous to that, it was very much like, what sort of stuff do you need? Like sort of your basic tools and stuff. You don't need loads and loads of ridiculous stuff that you'd normally take to nationals, like, because no matter how many times you go to a national, you always find yourself bringing stuff you don't need, but it's always that one time that you don't take it that you need it, obviously, as everyone knows, and probably come across that millions of times. But it's just like, I always put some people would say different. I always put my transmitter in the suitcase. This was when we used to fly. I always put my transmitter in the suitcase, my car in the transmitter and car in the hand luggage.
Yeah.
I'd normally put like a charger, some engines, like a couple of sets of tyres, just so that when you go through customs, okay, they might say, well, this looks a bit weird and a bit suspicious, but you can prove what it does. Like, oh, this is a tyre, so like this goes on the car, and you can explain to them what it does, you know?
Yeah.
Like, this is the engine, put it in the car, and you can explain to them. Obviously, they never let you start it up or anything, but because they quite often like you to like prove what it does. So, well, at least when I've had experiences like that, they'll say, well, what does it do? And it sort of always makes me think, I don't know why they make you like turn all your radio on, because really they don't know what it is, but turn the radio onto the car and prove what it does. This is what it is. And I always personally get like the like the paperwork that the race meeting have put on, like all the information of where it is and what it is, just so you can say, look, this is it. If you want to have a look, like obviously go on the website and see what it is. So I'm not like messing with you and not wasting your time. But I always try and have some basic things. If you just walk through with a controller, like a radio in your bag, it looks pretty suspicious. But it's all about like taking your car, obviously your little LiPo battery in there, and just prove, so you can prove to them what it actually is. If you like just walk through with like engines in your bag or something, it looks a bit nobody really knows what it is. So then we just put obviously things like body shells and stuff in the main suitcases, and we just pack around that with like socks and stuff and clothes and what have you, and then just other bits like your starter boxes and your heavier bits and pieces go in there. But, yeah,
brilliant. So but I think we're nearly out of time. So I think we're going to finish. Just for a bit of fun. Loads of people do this. So 10 quick fire questions, yes or no's or quick answers.
Yeah.
Just to know a little bit more about you. So we'll run through these, and then we can call it a day. So favorite full size car.
RS6.
Wow, okay. Gravy on chips, yes or no?
Yes.
Northern.
I drink
Favourite all-time movie?
Rush Hour.
Rush Hour.
Yeah. I don't really watch films much. I'm not really. I'd rather sit in silence than watch TV, to be honest. Me.
Pineapple on a pizza, yes
Yes.
or no? Yes. Favourite Formula One team?
McLaren.
Good man. Beer or lager?
Anything. Don't really bother me.
Just as long as it's alcoholic and wet.
Pretty much.
Okay. Here's a good one for you. This will make you some friends. Who's your favourite RC driver?
Has there got to be one?
Yeah.
Has there got... Oh. Yellis Groskamp.
Wow, okay. Your favourite RC track anywhere that you visited, or not necessarily in the UK, but your favourite RC track?
Gubbio in Italy.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Okay, so who's better, Hamilton or Schumacher?
Hamilton.
PlayStation or an Xbox?
I haven't played one for about 8 years, but I'll say I've always been a PlayStation boy when I've had one.
PlayStation boy of your age. Alex, it's been great, and that's best part of an hour. Learned some stuff, great stories, and perhaps in the future have you back and we can talk a bit more about the stories that we can't really talk about on a family show. So let's see if we can do that.
Yeah, brilliant.
So it's been great. Really appreciate it, and yeah, I think it's good fun.
Certainly
Okay.
is.
Take
All right,
care,
mate.
mate. Take care. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.